In your tool set, you have a wire tool. We're not using the wire tool. These are for sculpting and carving soft clay. We're using a ribbon tool. So it is a ribbon of metal instead of a thick wire. Make sense? The ribbon tools are sharper. They're made for trimming. These can just smush the clay ineffectively. My favorite tool is the one I gave you, which is one of these. But my other favorite is this one, which I have in the shared tool set. They're just more expensive, so I don't have as many. These can get rusty, so don't leave them wet or in the water a long time. And they work a lot better if they're clean. Now, first thing, I noticed that she's got a lot of this extra clay here that she didn't clean up on the wheel. That's why it's actually easier to clean it up on the wheel. It makes trimming easier. But if you have that, if you have as much as this, which is why I chose this one as an example, just cut it off first. So to hold a knife for carving, you pinch the blade and grip it like this. Then I can pull it towards myself. So I'm going to just take that and I'm going to carve away just the worst of it. This clay that she has is a little past leather hard, but it's still okay. One way I know it's past leather hard is instead of bending, it kind of cracks really easy. You know what I mean? So it's still trimmable, but a little farther than you'd want. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this just makes the next step a lot easier. Okay. Now we're going to center. So clean, dry, fat.
It's not plugged in.
Cool. Pro tip, plug it in. Thanks, Emma. So if you're a beginning thrower, the rim might not be that even. And so the rim might be a different center compared to the foot. So here's what you do. When you center this on the wheel, it's okay if the rim is off center. See how that's not centered? That's okay. What does matter is this part here. See how it's the part nearest to the area I'm going to trim. This is what you look at when you determine if it's centered or not. So how do you do it? One way is you just get it going slowly, and I'm just resting my hands in my laps, and I'm just kind of bracing my thumb. Push up against my thumb, and then tells me where to push. I feel it brush, push. Wait for it, push. So slow speed. Wherever it touches my hand, it tells me to push it in. Now, you might have something that's not perfectly round that is impossible to center. This is now evenly touching my hand now. See how that part is pretty centered? That's what I'm looking for. Whether or not this is centered is not a big deal. Same with this. But right here is our closest best part. There's another way to do it. It's called tap centering. So in a medium small wheel speed, you tap it. There's something called centripetal force, which forces things to the inner axis of a spinning object. So that's another way to do it. All right. One tool to help you brace yourself is a lap board. So let me come back to that. Next up, the lugs. Make 4 lugs of soft clay. So it's like a little, I don't know, like a cocktail weenie, something like that. No, it's like longer than a tater tot. I need a good analogy here, folks. I got nothing. Mini corn dog. Let's go with that. Okay. So then what you do is you position them opposite of each other. And I'm going to push down to the wheel head first. And I do them at the same time because if I did just one, it might push my bowl over. So click, one down. Look at that. And then this. So in other words, I didn't push in hard on the bowl, but now it's holding it there. Do the same thing on the opposite side. Check your center. Okay. One thing I forgot to do on this one, Madsen, could you hand me your bowl a second? Before you put it on the wheel, you want to look at the inside curve and try to gauge and judge how thick it is there. If you don't know how thick it is, use your T-square. Lay that across. And measure. That'll tell you how much clay thickness there is. So for Matson's, there's only a little over 1/4 of an inch that, so he can't trim down very much on this. Okay. In the storage room, I have these. We use them in art class for clamping to the desk for easels. This you put across your lap, and it gives you something to rest your arms on or your hands on. Optional, but for most people at first especially, it helps you. I'm going to begin with getting this even. So notice when I spin the wheel, it's uneven. So to do this across the top, this is not bad because we use a string there, but use the corner. Now you hold it like a pencil and brace yourself. So I'm going to do ring. The reason why I did points is there's less surface area dragging me. If I just laid the flat, the clay might push me around. Now I can do the flat. This is kind of a medium-high wheel speed. That gives me control. Now this is the uneven part. Now if I go in from the side, it's going to push me around too much. So instead, I like to use this circle. Now I'm going to start here from the top. Make sense? So that way I'm pushing down on the clay from a more even point of view. So I'm holding my hands pretty firm. Faster wheel speed can sometimes help. Okay, that's now we can see below, see how our bowl isn't perfectly even? So to merge into that, I'll slow the speed and kind of follow the bowl. So now I have a pretty even foundation to work from. And flat base. Next step, I'm just getting rid of these marks. Mark off where your foot ring is going to be. I think for this bowl, we want a foot ring that's close to this size. Too small would look weird, and I can't go bigger. So I'm going to use the corner of this, and I'm going to mark off in just a little bit. It'll be the outside of my foot ring. Remember, wall thickness or so, inside of the foot ring. So here's the foot ring itself. I went a little bit thicker than I'd really need because I can always trim it down. Now I'm going to start by removing this clay on the inside. And remember, I want to imagine the curve of the bowl. You could also start by removing the clay outside of it, but leave the ring itself alone. So I think I'll start on the outside, might make it easier for you guys to see. So I can continue to move down from here. If you ever knock it off the center or something, you can stop, take the lugs off, reposition it, put them back on. You can trim partway down the bowl, help fix up stuff there. Now we can see the curve of the bowl a little better. The wider angle is nice for kind of working on contouring a little bit. Okay. Curve of the bowl. Now I can't go as low here as here, of course, because it's the curved thing. So to take it down, I'm going to go point flat. Point, 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 flat, take out the point. Gives you a lot more control. Do another level, point. See, I'm bracing myself. I'm getting closer to where I need to start paying more attention to the curve. If you're like, hey, how thick was that again? You can take off just 2 lugs, check it, feel it, and put it back on, and it'll be pretty close to center. Get those little goobers out of there. If I press on this, sometimes you can feel, if it's super rock hard firm, it means it's pretty thick. If you feel the tiniest amount of flex, that means it's about the thickness you want. Now soft clay, of course, will flex more easily, so it might give you a false alarm. now I'm going to fine tune so I go right to flat. So I'm taking it down more, so I want to simulate the curve of the bowl. Now you guys on the kick wheel, a lot of people actually love the kick wheel for trimming specifically because you can really fine tune the speed. These are the worst for trimming because it's just jerky, fast, slow, on, off. You know what I mean? So if there's ever another wheel available for trimming, feel free to do that. Though you can trim perfectly fine on these. It's just suboptimal. Okay, so now I've got a curve that to me is simulating the outside curve kind of continuing on the inside. But the foot itself is clunky, and I think the foot's too tall aesthetically. So I'm going to take the foot down just a bit. Sometimes you get these perfect little curls flying off. It's super fun. Okay, now I like a foot that is angled in so you can grip it easier. It makes glazing a lot easier, and it just creates a shadow that looks nicer. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take the side in a little bit. Right in the undercut here. And sometimes that helps me see as well, like, do I have room to improve the shape of it? I like this one for final shaping just because it gives you more control over a wider area. Last step, fine tune the foot ring itself. If I want to thin it out a little bit, I can from either side. I'll thin it slightly. If your clay's too soft, well, these little shavings get stuck back to the clay and it's really annoying. If you have issues with that, but you're like almost done trimming, that is when you're allowed to use the heat gun. It's in that cabinet, so you can shoot the heat gun just to dry the surface so you have less issues with it being sticky. But it's better if you can just let it dry the right amount. Okay, final contouring of the foot itself. So I'm going to bevel the inside, bevel the outside. That's the shape we're looking for. When you're happy with the shape, we're going to burnish it or seal the clay. We're using this tool, the back of it. I'm going to start out here because I trimmed. Anywhere I trimmed, you've disrupted the clay particles, so I need to compress and align them. Also can smooth out stuff. Like if she didn't like these lines here, you could come back and just do more smoothing. Or you could even use like your metal rib gently to smooth some of that more. But I sometimes like the lines. I'm kind of rounding out. I don't want any sharp edges. But you don't want any corners on the very bottom because as the clay expands on the kiln shelf or as you slide it on a shelf, imagine skis where the front of the ski was just straight. Wouldn't it catch on any little bump? Well, the same is true in the edge of a foot. That's why we want it to be beveled. Now the bottom is especially important to do this compression. It helps reduce the risk of cracks. So you're compressing the clay. And since the bottom had dried the slowest compared to everything else, and it was the thickest, it's the most likely area to crack, as cracks are very common on bowls. You almost never have them if you let it dry evenly and you do this. If you want to do a little just like we did on the inside, you can come in there and fine tune the look of the bottom. Now what's nice about a foot like this too, when we glaze, you don't even have to use wax because there can be glaze here and here. Last thing, take off just 2 lugs to check. Do you see her rim? Nice rim. Foot ring is related in thickness. Okay? Does the bowl feel balanced to you? Does it feel really bottom heavy or does it feel pretty even? This is feeling pretty good. It's a good sign that the thickness here is right. So at this step, this is a really lovely bowl. I'd be happy to have that bowl. Do you see how that really made her work look a lot better? So the beautiful bowl is in there, okay? This is the point when you're ready that you can sign the bottom with your maker's mark if it works. If not, just press in and do your initials. We always are gonna let the bowl dry on their rims. If the rims are very soft, you can put like folded paper towels underneath it. Any bowls that you completely finish with, I want you to keep wrapped until at least tomorrow, and then we'll turn them in. To wrap this, I would just wrap it individually in its own piece of plastic. You can stop the video.